Oh, sweetheart. I did not forget about our lunch date. At all, I promise. Well, I was, but I also knew you were coming. I figured working until you got here wasn't exactly an egregious sin, especially since I was going to stop once you got here. Which, I would like to point out, I did. Let me just sign this last thing and then we can go. Oh, don't you pull that card on me. As if I'd lie to you in the first place without the reminder. Not that the reminder matters, since it's fictitious anyway. But I digress. Just let me. There. Done. Putting it down and going to lunch. Before we do, though, this doesn't really count as work, but it is something work related that we need to discuss that happened to get dropped back onto my desk right before you got here. I don't think my boss is spying on me, but moments like this make me wonder sometimes. Yeah. I got handed this a few days ago and sorted through it before handing it back, but I guess my boss didn't like my answers. I thought it was nothing. Apparently, the brass still has concerns. I think they're just being overly cautious, which isn't the worst thing in the world. Recently, more and more reports of ancient ward breaches are popping up across the map, and cases of ancient wards needing to be reinforced are on the rise too. For the most part, though, they aren't a big deal, it doesn't look like. Nothing seemed outside of acceptable, normal parameters to me. But I was asked to check with you, just to be sure. The three biggest issues they wanted me to cross-check with you are Ainsley, Evansville, and Sarley. Fewer than 10 reinforcements were required in Ainsley in the last 6 months, which, when you take into account the size of Ainsley's population and that the last time any wards in Ainsley needed serious reinforcement was probably a century ago, that really doesn't strike me as all that odd. In fact, I'd say they were reinforced almost too well, considering. But that probably also means they're likely going to come due for a city-wide reinforcement soon. Last month, Evansville needed 15 reinforcements, and there were a dozen breaches in the last 6 weeks alone, with 4 times that number since summer. But when you consider that that was when Evansville's Anchorage marker was found, and the ensuing slew of people who rushed to treat it like some sort of pilgrimage site. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Last week, some professor at SAME made a case to research the marker. If I remember right, the thesis was that it would be pivotal to unlocking the history of magic's origins. We managed to get the request for funding shut down. I don't know if it quite constitutes a close call yet, but it's definitely something to be watchful for. But that does also let me neatly seg into Sarley. Sarley's had a lot of issues recently. They had almost 30 breaches in the last 2 weeks, I think. There's some agent who's apparently taken umbrage with the new reporting procedures, so sorting through his reports is... I was going to say an experience, but daunting works. He's actually got a knack for writing, if I'm being honest. I'll get a copy of one of his more recent ones for you. My favorite is from a breach a few months ago when a wielder's powers manifested. I swear to you, the report reads like Jane Austen. He practically romanticized the description of the fire itself. It's completely enthralling. Oh, it's absolutely a talent. I just wish he'd put it to more constructive use than this. Anyway, I pulled the reports from the last 15 years to compare, and despite the dedicated fervor of this one agent's reporting, there are only a couple of suspicious breaches. Of the two most recent, one of them was on Same's campus. The guy's partner actually reported that one, and one was a couple of blocks from some sort of arson. No, completely mundane. Reinforcements in Sarley aren't markedly higher than expected, or at least not to any point where I felt it was worthy of note. But there are more required than it feels like perhaps there should be, even if by only a fraction. But that's also not outside the norm or expectations, I don't think. If the old wards are going to need consistent strengthening anywhere, it's Sarley. The magical population there is practically massive in the first place. And then when you take into account that both the agency's central headquarters and Same are there, and then Same's preeminence in the magical community leading to the size of their student population, well, with all of that magic being so frequently and consistently cast, that Sarley's ancient wards are some of the most taxed, in need of the most consistent reinforcing, makes sense. I didn't tell you because I didn't think there was anything to tell. You know that if I thought there was for even a moment, I would have said something. Part of my job is to be a liaison to you and your people, and part of my job is to protect both your people and mine. And I am damn good at my job. And even if you question my dedication to or capability at my job, which I know you don't, sweetheart, so don't think that's what I'm saying. I know you don't question that I love you. This isn't something I'd want to catch you by surprise for so many more reasons than I can enumerate. My heart, you've been holding the gate, standing that breach, for centuries. I know how much you care about your people and about this world. I know how devoted you are, how determined to maintain the safety of this world for everyone in it. And to say that my faith in you is both resolute and absolute feels like an understatement. Literal centuries, my heart, that you've been watching and waiting and readying. That is amazing in the most literal sense. And I can't tell you how much respect I have for that, and for you, and how much I appreciate it. But I also know what that level of vigilance can sometimes lead to, especially after so long. Don't be that way. You know I would never. All I am saying is that when I was promoted to this position, you yourself told me the wards would sometimes falter. Well, that was how you put it. So if you have objections about the phrasing, I can't help you. I'm only repeating what someone much wiser in the matter told me. Are you actually concerned about any of this? Have your people picked up anything that would shed any additional light on any of it? Is there something in here that I've missed? I can probably let it sit for a week before the brass starts really breathing down my neck over it. That's enough time for all the information to make its way through all the proper channels and then back to me. I'll bring copies home tonight, then. We can go over them all together, and I can snag any additional breach or reinforcement reports that might come up over the next week. It'll be fine, my heart. This is exactly why my position exists, so that none of us are caught unaware. The agency is watching, your people are watching, and you are watching. You've done so much for so many, for so long, and so few know any of it. I'm in absolute awe of you. Do you know that? Well, I am. It'll be all right. We're gonna figure this out together. Okay. And we'll do that together too. Yes, now. What do you mean I made a deal? Oh, you'd best be careful or I'll nail an iron horseshoe over our bedroom door. Well, it's just as real as your threat about what happens if I renege on a deal, so I think it's a fitting response. I love you. Now, let's go get that lunch before they say I've missed my chance and chain me to my desk.